I'm here today with Mark Chillingworth, who is chair of the Horizon CIO Network and a contributing editor to titles such as Diginomica, ICIO, and many more. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
So, Mark, before we get into it, can you talk a little bit about your own role, background, and experience?
Absolutely. So, a writer by trade, journalist, and been writing about technology or business and technology since the late 1990s, and moved into the CIO world in 2008 as editor of CIO in the UK, and spent 8 years running that title, and have since now I work independently writing for those publications you mentioned and some others. And I also work directly for a number of CIOs, helping them with their the burden of writing, telling the organization what transformation is and what's happening, but they never get time. Neither the CIO nor their team members ever get the time to write about the story of what they're doing and why they're doing it. So I go in and help them with that.
Okay, great. And very important job, because I know from experience with CIOs, they're some of the most busy people around. But for the benefit of those who aren't familiar with that kind of terminology, can you talk a little bit about the role of the CIO and if that's changed in recent years?
Absolutely. It's been amazing watching the CIO role change from 2008 when I entered the world. It was obviously that we had the banking crisis during 2008. And at the time, the CIO was the most senior technologist in the organization. And at that time, probably moved towards a very one-stop shop deal with, large deals with system integrators or all-encompassing providers, the likes of IBM and what have you, to keep the organization moving forward, but also to drastically reduce costs in the recession that followed. Where that has changed since 2008 is now the CIO is much more of a business leader, and that moment in 2008 was the beginning of that, because obviously if you can prove operational efficiency and you can drive cost out of the business, that makes you very much a business person. You just happen to be doing it with technology. So the role has very much changed, and today I find CIOs are they're not managers of technology, they're brokers. The revolution we've seen happen in technology in recent years means that, of course, everyone in the organization understands technology to a degree, knows how to procure and implement technology to a degree. So the CIO and their team is very much the broker, making sure that everything is compliant, making sure all your systems integrate properly, and make sure the business benefits. So it's very much a brokerage business leadership role.
And from your experience, how is IT perceived by the business and by the employees within the business?
It's a great question, particularly this year, when, or in the last 12 months, I should say, where, of course, IT has been so vital to keeping organizations going during this terrible global pandemic. So at the moment, IT and CIOs are pretty well received for having delivered sustainability for organizations in terms of business sustainability and economic sustainability. For many organizations, when they went into the pandemic, there were clear strategic and investment gaps in the technology, and that of course correlates into things like end user experience, customer service, and what have you. I think that gap is going to be very much the focus for the organizations and for their business technology teams throughout 2021 and the coming years.
Okay, and how well do you think IT understands the needs of the business and the end users within the business?
There are examples of really strong understanding and what have you, but there are also still some very trenchant views from the past. You can't have the language of the business and IT. The two are intertwined, have to be intertwined, and any organization that is still having that business and IT, that service and delivery type conversation, is not moving in the correct direction.
And what do you think the best run IT departments are doing to cross that gap, I guess, and to enhance the employee experience of IT?
I think there's a range of things being done and got to be done, everything from communication, greater analysis of the of the experience that users need undergo. But also I think what CIOs and IT teams are also discovering is the complexity of their organizations is a huge barrier. And some of that is, as I was saying, that, underinvestment or strategic gaps somewhere has created issues that people have just made workarounds or what have you. We've had a lot of merger and acquisition activity in certain markets. So there's a very fragmented landscape out there. So I think CIOs and IT departments are really beginning to see that they need a better map that helps them understand what is going on in the organization, and a better way to understand what that landscape does to people's user experience and ultimately to the customer's experience.
And what have you seen in the market, or what have you seen CIOs and IT departments do to understand that landscape, or to get that map?
It's early days, to be honest. I've seen some organizations really, work very hard on it and deploy technologies, deploy ways of understanding their organizations, lots of interpersonal relationship work, business development managers pivoting into new roles, so digital delivery heads and what have you, being much more relationship builders and bridges into things. But there's many organizations who still haven't begun that journey.
And it sounds like having a conversation with the business is critical at all levels, but empathy with the end users, empathy with the customers. And is it time for IT to move more into a proactive role in regards to gathering feedback, understanding at a local level or even a micro level down to the individual?
I think in all trades, it's important to be proactive with getting feedback, isn't it? And it's not always a nice experience to go through at certain times in our careers. But yeah, absolutely. I think that certainly the senior and mid levels of technology are really seeing the benefits of that, or personally investing in that to improve that skill set in themselves, or improve that skill set and the tools that they can use in that part of their organizational setup.
Okay. And going forward, do you see the role of empathy in IT growing? Is it the future?
I do, and I think, interestingly, I work with one organization where they're all incredibly young and full of ideas. They're a scale-up media organization, and of course, the generation coming through that are driving the economy forward, they're younger and they're full of more ideas, but also they're full of empathy. They're a much more empathetic and very creative generation of people. They fill you with hope. And I think, if technology and if technology departments or service providers aren't delivering an empathy to empathetic people, then the relationship won't build and there'll be a disconnect. So therefore, I think empathy just has to grow, because the world, I think, is becoming more empathetic, and that can only be a good thing.